I'm so glad you're here. I'm Kate Champion. I'm an author, therapist, and generally curious human whose life has been full of ups and downs, twists and turns, mess and adventures, some intentional and some not so much. Welcome to Living Big Mindfully, a later in life podcast. Here are 3 questions for you. Are you ready? Are you in midlife or beyond? Or maybe struggling with next steps or finding your feet? Possibly feeling like something's missing, not quite right with your life? Or maybe you have a sense that you're really not living your own truth. Okay, you're right, that was way more than 3 questions. But were there any yes answers? Yeah? Okay, fantastic. That means that you are in the right place and this is the show for you. So grab a seat, get comfy, and join us for inspiring, heartfelt conversations. Conversations with real people just like you and me. Listen in as we chat about life, love, health, healing, and thriving well into our later years. And let's commit to creating honest, fulfilling lives and giving a high five to living big mindfully. One more thing. Make sure you visit katechampionauthor.com. Check out Never Too Late and You Are Limitless, my best-selling books. And while you're there, be sure to download your free hiking guide. And remember, check out our Living Big Mindfully community on Facebook. And please share your favorite episode with your friends. Thank you so much. Okay, that is enough for me. Are you ready? Great. Then let's dive in. In today's episode of Living Big Mindfully, I am chatting with Mayda Poc. Mayda is a cancer survivor and a recovering overachiever whose body literally said, no more. Mayda starts by sharing her inspirational story, which took her from immigrant to financial guru to overachiever to people pleaser to cancer survivor. And now she's a coach that helps other women get off that type A perfectionistic hamster wheel. Listen in and learn about the type A personality, the art of setting and sticking to your boundaries, and why we must get better at listening to and honoring our bodies. And then we chat about cultural, corporate, and gender influences. So you might be curious to see if you're at higher risk for burnout or a health crisis. And of course, throughout the conversation, Mayda shares lots of tips, strategies, and sage advice. And as always, make sure you check out the show notes for those resources. Okay, let's get on with the show. Hello, Mayda. It's so great to connect with you today. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Kate.
You are welcome. So this is Mayda Poc, and she is going to talk to us today all about not being good enough. And I think that is just such a heartbreaking place to be and to feel, to have to show up every day with this kind of not good enough. And also, now she has a business that helps people kind of work through that. So tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your history and your background.
Yes, not being good enough. It's probably one of those things that start very early in life and we don't catch it until we're confronted with a problem and we have to deal with it. But anyhow, I grew up in the Middle East, in Syria and in France. I started my career in finance and investment banking, first in Paris and then in London and then in New York. And I did that for 16 years. And it was very exciting. It's, living in these big cities and fast and furious, and it's very useful. And so I had to deal with something that I wasn't expecting, which was advanced cancer. And like a lot of people, I think when you don't feel good enough, you don't, how can I say that? You don't honor what you are dealt with. You don't pause and say, maybe it's good for me to take care of myself. So for me, cancer was an annoyance, and it was coming between me and having to prove myself that I'm not a quitter. I'm not a loser. I'm not lazy. All these kind of things that I had in my head at that time. So advanced cancer, I continued working. I continued receiving, except the day of chemotherapy, which was something that I negotiated with the doctor because you cannot, I wanted to work. And the doctor's like, no, you're receiving this through the veins is really not a good idea. So this is how messed up we can be sometimes when we live really on these old programming unconsciously. And after a certain number of months, and years, actually, it was obvious that I was not able to deal with the amount of stress. I was getting very anxious. I was having panic attacks. And at that time, it was obvious for me that I had to do something about it. Otherwise, in my head, I was going to have another cancer or something similar to say, whoa, take a break here. So I did take a break. I quit my job and went through certifications and all these kind of things. And since then, I have been coaching executives, all ages, between 27 up to how much you want to work or not. Actually, I also worked with people who were in retirement, and just helping you find this kind of soft spot where you're still achieving, you're still producing, you're still paying your rent. You're not in that place where like, whoa, how am I going to make ends meet? But at the same time, finding that place inside of you where you feel that you matter, you feel you're making an impact, and actually you don't feel that you need to earn your right to exist and live, which is something that a lot of people who don't feel good enough struggle with as well. So that's me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And thank you for sharing. So there's a couple of points I'd like to go back to. One of them is that we were talking in the introduction and you were talking about the cancer and really ignoring a lot of the signs, right? You were ignoring your body. You were on this kind of autopilot, kind of go, go, go. And it sounds like your body made you stop, right? It sounds like the body just said, stop, enough. I'd love to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that. Like, how did you just know, I just can't do this anymore. I have to care for myself. How did you come to that junction?
And it's an excellent question because I blissfully ignored. It's not that I didn't want to do. I had some trouble breathing. So I went to doctors and I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, which in itself is quite difficult for general practitioners to actually identify because it's a lot of different things. But for me, I wasn't breathing. And so I got diagnosed with bronchitis, with, I don't know what. I had asthma. They said that I had asthma. So for 2 years for me, you know what? I have asthma. It's life. I'm fine. I will continue. And until the day I really literally fell on the street here of New York City. And I'm like, I can't breathe. I was blue. I can't breathe anymore. What is going on? And at that point, things changed for me because it was, okay, this is not asthma. There is something else. And I had a mentor at that time who was my acupuncturist. And she's like, you cannot do this anymore. Go and see an ENT. And from there were a lot of steps. But your body knows. And when we live, as you said, on this complete autopilot, when we are driven by the fear of not producing, not doing, the body at some point will say, stop. It's better to listen before you get to that point, because once you get to that point, like me, you will be like, I was advanced plus. I was really on the other side of the probability of survival. We shouldn't be there, but your body will tell you. And I think many of us forget that the body has a wisdom. It's not a machine. It's not, it is very efficient. I went through intensive chemotherapy, and I can tell you, I have worked throughout, kept my job modified, worked a bit from home as well, which was very new at that time. But your body is an unbelievable machine of survival, of nurturing, of a lot of different things. And when the body starts not cooperating with what you decide you want to have it done, it will let you know. And this is also part of living mindfully is, we're all humans. Some people have kids, or if you have pets even, you know that at some point they're going to stop and just go and take a nap. Why do we ignore that in ourselves? Well, because we're not living in unless you live in Spain or Greece, but for most people, you cannot just stop and take a nap. But there are other ways your body is telling you, I'm not okay anymore. And don't ignore it. Just take the time to go within and think about, does my body feel safe with me? And for me, that is what it stays with, from that experience does my body feel safe with me? And you realize, or at least for me, that for as long as I could remember, my body cannot feel safe with me because I was pushing it to the most extreme ways of, I was doing intermittent fasting, like crazy. I was fasting while having 14, 15 hour schedules. I was doing a lot of different things, and the body cannot follow, and it shouldn't.
Mm-hmm. I love that question. So I think just pause. I want to reiterate that question, asking yourself, reflecting, does my body feel safe with me? I mean, that's just such a powerful, who asks that of themselves every day or once a week or once a month, right? Who checks in and says, hey, does my body really like what I'm doing? Does it really feel safe with me? And it's such a powerful question. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah. So you realized that your body didn't feel safe and your body collapsed, right? It sounds like it collapsed on the streets of New York. You were blue. I'm guessing emergency people were called and you wound up in the emergency room. You must have been terrified. What was that like?
I was going to say, I didn't even end up in the emergency room because I decided I'm not dealing with this. I have a very important transaction going on. I cannot deal with that. So I picked myself up. I went home. I did some breathing and I carried like nothing happened. But at the same time, there was this voice inside of me that says, listen to what your acupuncturist is doing and go and see one last doctor. And I think inside of you, well, at least for me, I knew there was something that was waiting for me to be solved. And and then after that, it goes very fast. As soon as they see that there is something, it goes very fast. All of these scans and your job is to find an oncologist in a way. And I was very lucky. I had a network in a way of, I didn't even call that a network people. It was my ex-boss who himself knew someone who knew someone. And I am someone who my whole life has been, when I was in my early 20s, one of the things I told myself is I want to eat and nourish my body so that it feels at 90 what it feels today at 20. So I was very conscious with the food. I knew everything about food, with, very little alcohol, no smoking, no recreational anything. And always taking the minimal dose of aspirin or whatever when I felt something was going on. And I was always in this preventative state where I would be very careful. And when I was in front of the oncologist and he said to me, I have a space for you for chemotherapy on Tuesday. If I had to think about it, I would have said no. Because my brain was still like, no, I want to do these things naturally and whatever. But it wasn't me who spoke at that time. That was really literally my body. I was like, yes, I'm in. I see myself as complete detachment from between what my brain wanted and what my body was like. Yes, we have to go through that. And I think at that time, and it's really, really important. Before that, I was someone who was mainly vegan. Eating animal products because I was not breathing and stuff was part of my hygiene. I can tell you one thing, the day after my first chemotherapy, I was craving meat. And when I say meat and milk chocolate and stuff that I haven't eaten for years, but this is also the body telling you, because I had blood cancer and the blood needs that's that grounding and that substance or sustenance. So I think really, if there's one takeaway, is listen to your bodies, don't listen to your heads, don't listen to your beliefs. They're not good advisors. They have an agenda. And sometimes the agenda is very pleasing socially, but it's not for your highest good. So your wisdom is within, is not necessarily in your brain. Not always, at least.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. When you were talking there, I was honestly getting some goosebumps, right? When you were really talking about really tuning into your wisdom, right? That your body, if you listen, right, your body will give you the cues. It will tell you what it needs, right? Even down to food, right? Meat, dairy, chemotherapy. I mean, the body really leads you in the right direction if you can lean into that wisdom. Yeah, that's really powerful. Well, let's take a breath or two. I just feel like it's just so much. And we are here to actually, I really wanted to dive into the not being good enough and never being good enough, because I'm also a psychotherapist and I work with a lot of women. And this core belief, this limiting core belief, this kind of not good enough comes up over and over and over again, especially for women, it seems. So I'd love to talk about that. And you also refer to yourself as a recovering people pleaser and overachiever, right? who had this kind of sense of not good enough. And so please, let's talk about that for a little while.
Oh my goodness. Yes. It is, I think it is one of those parasites. I call that a parasite because it's not even a belief at some point. It just comes back on. And then we go into this confirmation bias. Like somebody says, oh, this is not good enough. And we're like, it's me who's not good enough. I think women in particular, I'm sure men have that, but from experience, men are very good at saying, I brush it off, but women stay there. And especially in the workplace where they feel that they are permanently having to prove themselves. The workplace is not the most gentle environment, but at the same time, it is a place of a lot of growth if we allow it to be. And one of those is having this reflection to us as in, where am I overextending myself? And so there are different ways we don't feel good enough. So for me, for example, I'm an immigrant myself. My parents were immigrants. Even my grandparents were immigrants. It's a whole history of having to move from one country to another for survival. And I noticed as well, I'm by far not the only one, is that when people come from this kind of background, there is this need to prove yourself, to prove that you belong, to prove that you conform, that you are a lot like other people. So there is the survival issue of not being good enough and wanting to overachieve and overprove. For a lot of women, but it's not only in finance, it's everywhere. There is this idea that there will never be what is expected of them. And this is where the issue is. It's the expectations. Sometimes they're real. Most times I'm going to invite people who are listening to really tell me whether the expectations are real or not. Sometimes they just projected. And there is this idea that because they are women, they have to do more, they have to work more, they have to prove more. And the reality is a problem is that for many of them, of us, we work in a male environment where the structure, and it's normal, it has been like this for a long time, promotion structure, job structure has been really framed for men. So working 10, 12, 14 hours a day, pushing for things, it's a very male energy. And women's energy is a bit more cyclical. We're cyclical by nature, but from our bodies, but even our energies are cyclical. We are more into the push and pull, where men seem to have more constant and up and down, but more constant. And I feel this also contributes to this idea that you can overextend yourself. You can do whatever you can. But at the end of the day, you're never going to be a man, and you're never going to be able to achieve as much as they do. And this perpetuates this idea that not good enough, and that is for the workplace. And then, you know what happens? Your self-confidence takes a hit, and you bring that home, and it creates a lot of issues, I think, mentally, emotionally as well, where it's anything can trigger this not good enough. Anything is going to put you in that state of, I'm not like others. There's a good thing about the difference, but when it's a chosen way of differentiating yourself, but when you feel that you compare yourself to others and you know that it doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to get there. It triggers what also I call the people pleasing, where all of a sudden it's not about your boundaries anymore. It's what would happen if I say no? Are they going to judge me? They're going to say that, you know what, I'm a woman and I cannot do it, or I'm not strong enough, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough. Yeah. And that is very depleting. This is like a compounding thing where we overachieve. We allow other people to infringe our limits and our boundaries. And then we end up saying, well, see, I'm a loser, or I cannot even stand up for myself. So I'm not good. It's a vicious cycle that really needs to be interrupted by something, and hopefully by mindfulness, by self-awareness, and as soon as possible, if it's possible, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you talked about so much there, and connecting. For me, the light bulb went on when you were connecting the not good enough with the people pleasing, right? That's like stacking, right? We're stacking this not good enough. And in order to prove that's not correct, right? We go into this, of course, completely unconsciously, right? We go into this people pleasing and overachieving, right? People pleasing and overachieving. And again, I see that cycle mostly in women over and over and over again. And it's so exhausting. And with that, I see burnout. I see more anxiety. I see more depression. I see more of this kind of hopelessness. Women aren't maybe as vibrant as they could be when they're really stuck in this cycle of, these really difficult emotions. Can you give me an example, if you're comfortable, of a time in your life where, those kind of, that three-legged stool kind of came together? So we've got the not good enough, we've got the people pleasing, and then we got the overachieving, right? That kind of a three-legged stool there. Can you give me an example in your life where that came up, and then also how you maybe worked through that?
Yes. So for me, the example is my career in finance, in particular when I got into the US. So for a very long time, I was someone who always does her best, and I was really enjoying my work. I mean, it's difficult. Finance is a difficult place, but there was a form of challenging intellectual, and I liked my colleagues. So at some point I had a new boss, a new manager, whose mission for some reason was to get me out. And there was a lot of picking on me at that point. It's like, you're not, you're too junior. I was mid-level, but you're too junior. A lot of the decision making that was something that I was proud of was taken away from me. There was this pressure for me to work very long hours. I remember, it's an anecdote, but it stayed within me, is that anytime I would be eating my lunch at my desk, because this is the US, you just, I wish we could do like France, where you take a moment out, but anytime
Spain,
I was
Portugal, yes,
anywhere sane, anytime I was eating at my desk, he would come and interrupt me and have me do something for him that was urgent, that couldn't wait. I remember getting home at 8 p.m. and being called back to the office in an emergency of some sort. So it cultivated in me this survival that if I don't do as they want, then I'm going to get fired. And if I get fired, what do? I have no idea what to do else, right? And the kind of seed that was implanted in my head is that I'm not good. I don't know what to do. Yeah. I'm not good. And from there, I went into a cycle of waking up at 4 a.m, calling Hong Kong, then calling London, then calling the Middle East, eating at 4 a.m, going in the shower, up to the office. And it was like, for me, it was a cycle of, I need to prove myself that I'm not stupid, I'm not useless, that I count, that I matter. And it became a very difficult place to be, because in one way, I was doing that. I knew I was doing that. But the other side of it, I was very resentful, and I became very angry at that time. So anything that anybody was asking for was a no. It didn't matter whether it was reasonable or not. Anything that wasn't coming from my boss was a no. That is not a good way of progressing in the workplace, but that was that side of the overachieving, people pleasing, which was like, I need to preserve my sanity and I cannot give it more. And I was tired. I was literally crying every single morning in the bathroom before going to the office, because these places, women don't cry. No, there is a song, boys don't cry, but in these places, women don't cry. And I cried only once at the desk. And the guy who was senior at that time, when I was in London, saw me cry. And until the day I left, because he was still in the same company throughout, he would, every single time he would see me, he would remind me how I cried at the desk. And so this perpetuates because, it's okay for men to be angry. Anger is fine, but, crying is not. So there is this, pick and choose your emotions. So that was that. And how did I get myself out of it? It took time. It took time because for me, it took me a long time to realize that actually being Syrian and Lebanese and all these kind of things, and Armenian, my family thing, plus being French and having lived in all of these countries and worked in these countries is actually an asset. And doing the work that I do today is also something that in me was like, maybe there is something in that. Maybe my difference is actually not something that is that bad. It's quite the opposite, because maybe I'm helping people who are different. We are all different. Just accepting that you don't have really to apologize for who you are. In the workplace, it's not about asserting on and on your difference, because that is not the point. You need a form of cohesion. You need people, if you want to be promoted and go up the ladder, people need to see you as being one of them. So there is so much of differentiating. You have to, but not that much. But it's not about hiding it. It's not about apologizing for yourself. And it's about, that's what I can do. And I give it my 110%. But after that, if I don't have a positive feedback for that, I stop. Because you're never going to be everybody's cup of tea, ever. So might as well exactly work with the people who actually honor you and appreciate you. And this is also a very good way of self-motivating, is when you find the people who are actually your allies in a way, or your support system in life. And what is, there is this thing in me, and I see it so much, is you go and you try to please the people who don't like you. And you have the people who like you, who have always been supporting you, and they say, good job. It's like, it doesn't matter. You don't matter because you're already on my side. And then you go and kill yourself to try to please people who, by definition, are not going to be pleased. And this is where I want people to just say, okay, this person is hardcore, judgmental, critical, whatever. I do my job. I stand my boundaries. And then very quickly you realize that that is the expectation that you were projecting on them. And you give them what they want. They like it, great. They don't like it, feedback. You do what you can and you move on, but you don't stay stuck into trying to please them at any cost, because it's actually that little kid inside of you that wants to please. And you're not a kid, you're an adult. And this thing,
yeah.
Sorry. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I just want to say that I think you're so right. I think there's a younger part in us that wants to please, so wants to please, and so wants acceptance. And I love what you said about don't put time and energy into pleasing people that don't like or don't care for you or aren't really aligned with you. Right?
Yes.
It's such a powerful statement. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the other part as well, probably to be aware of, is that for a lot of people, we have this tendency to see authority as being a parent. Like we think our boss is our daddy or our mommy or whatever. We have this idea that they are there to protect us, to whatever it is. It's not the case. They're doing their jobs. You're doing your job. It's a contract between the two of you. It's a business contract. So their job is to ask you for something. Your job is to deliver it. And their job is to promote you because you show potential or whatever. Pleasing is not. It gets you into these very unhealthy relationships where you spend your time, like trying to run behind that wagon that you will never reach anyways. So don't.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love the simplicity of that transactional relationship when you're working for somebody else, right? It is a transactional relationship. It reminds me of a psychiatrist I worked with once, and he said, it's really important to realize that it's not the company that loves you, right? It's not the business. It's not the organization that loves you, right? That is the structure, right? You just got to go in and do your job and like you said, set those boundaries and understand the expectation. But a corporation, right, and its leadership will never love you, right? It's not a family. It's not your family. It's not your mother. It's not your father. No, I think that's really powerful. Really powerful. Yeah, really powerful. So now you're living a whole different life, right? You're living very mindful, really living true to your core values. How did you kind of begin to make that switch? And tell us a little bit about your life today.
Yes, the switch was not planned. And that this is one of the very not mature way of doing things. But it came at a point where I just couldn't deal anymore. And I had a panic attack, and it was too much. And I could have continued for another 10 years, but these places, I call that the game. You can, you stay there for a long, long, long time because you think you don't have choices, but we always do have choices. We don't see them as a choice, maybe, but that's different. And so I just laughed.
Stop there too.
Yes.
Hold on. I want to stop there. I want really to reiterate that we always have choices, right? Mm-hmm. As adults, right? As kids, we don't have choices, right? But as adults, we always have choices. And I really want listeners to hear that, whatever situation is, there's always a choice, always, always. So sorry to interrupt you there, but I really wanted to reiterate that.
And that's very important, because if you want to feel hopeless and helpless, you put in your brain that you don't have any choice. And all of a sudden, you're just a cog in a huge machine, and this machine is going to eat you alive. But if between that place, the rock and the hard place, there is always a choice. And one of the choices is acceptance, is, okay, I'm staying where I am because I want to pay my bills. And for the moment, I don't have a plan. That is a choice. There's a mindful and conscious choice. And when you start coming from that place of sovereignty, of agency, you realize that you have much more freedom than you think, or you allowed yourself to have. But for me, my freedom was to leave. And I just did. It took me time to find what I wanted to do, because again, this not good enough was really coming after me for a long time, as in, who am I to tell people what to do with their career? I left mine, and this is not, I a bit of imposter syndrome, really. I don't know how to call that, but who am I? Who am I to have the right? And then as things started unfolding, and at some point I started getting unpaid clients, and all of a sudden, one of the unpaid clients, which I was helping with her career pro bono, she's like, "You're doing a very good job. I want to pay you. I cannot not pay you." And from there, things started to unfold. And for me today, I really like the career strategy, the career coaching that I do. It has a flavor as well of life coaching. I do a lot of different modalities. Sometimes I don't do anything. Sometimes it's quite literally, how can I be promoted? And sometimes is, how can I feel at ease in what I do, because my parents think I'm a loser, or they would have liked my XYZ career to be better than, the neighbors. There's a lot of that going on as well. So this is what I do today.
So if we had some listeners kind of tuning in here today, and they're stuck in that kind of big corporate wheel, and they're feeling like they don't have any choice, and they're connecting with some of this dread, right? Some of the anxiety, some of this toxic energy. What are some first steps? What are some strategies that people could do to really even start to see they had a choice, and look and see that maybe there's some options out there? How might you coach somebody through that?
Yeah, I would definitely start by asking them to put down their achievements, because quite often career, like even transactions or all the achievements that they have, that they did at the job where they were, because quite often when you feel stuck as well, you have this sort of shame, career shame coming, as in, I don't know anything. I don't have any skills. I've never achieved something. So I would definitely start by that and show you that you have accomplished much more than you think that you have accomplished, because you are seeing your career from your own eyes, which are dimmed by the fact that there's no much light where you are. But if we took an observer point of view and see your resume or your LinkedIn or whatever, you will see that you have come from very far from where you started when you were 22, 23. So definitely I will start there. And then let's talk about if you're still where you are, it's because there is something in it for you. And it might not be something grandiose. A lot of people, especially people in their 20s, they want to have an impact. They want to matter. Everybody does. But there is this idea that they really are here to save planet Earth, or which can be fine. But we're here first and foremost to save ourselves. So you're being paid by a company in a way to start soul searching and start thinking about how you make an impact every day. And sometimes it's something as simple as showing up at work and working with a colleague who maybe is struggling or maybe is better than you. So this person is going actually to give you new elements or new skills. So second step is find how you make an impact. And it could be something as little as being a parent. Some people are mothers and dads, and they don't see that they are doing a lot of work that is super impactful. They don't see it that way. But yet, the job where you are is also giving you a paycheck to allow you to do that. So we go into from that place where I'm not a quitter, I cannot quit, I don't have any choice to, well, let's crack open this shell a bit. And then it depends really on what people want to do. Some people are happy to stay where they are because they want to explore a bit more. They feel that there is more to the job. They're in a place where they've been for long enough. So it gives you the possibility to start exploring where you are because people know you, so you can expand that way. And for some people, they're outgrown that place a long time ago. And this is a good time to start exploring outside. It really takes patience. You need to be patient. You need to take the time you need to be open to feedback. It's not very easy because some of the beliefs might have been, some people have a lot of beliefs about how easy it's going to be or sometimes how complicated it's going to be. And I think although the process is a process, it's the same for everyone. And it's quite easy. You go on YouTube, how to find a job. I think it's much more individual. And if you start seeing this, searching for a job or feeling better where you are and what have you as part of a hero's journey in a way where you have gifts, for me, the most important part is put the human connection at the center. I know it's a job. I know it's a paycheck, but I want you to start connecting with other humans, not only because it's transactional, but because there's another human over there. And once we go into what we are, like political animals, right? We are primed to live with other people. And you go into that phase where communication is a bit better, where you understand, have some empathy. You understand where the other person is coming from, but you don't give in necessarily, but you try to find win-wins and quid pro quos and what have you. And all of a sudden, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But when it works, it's wonderful because all of a sudden, there is this idea of people working for a common goal. And you are very aware of what you're adding. You don't let other people take credit for your jobs. That's a tough one sometimes. But at the same time, you're contributing and you honor that part of yourself that is achieving all of that. And you go back again. I like this word of pride because I feel that there is a lot of shame going on as well. So it's not pride as in vanity or, something selfish or egoistic or egocentric or anything like that. It was more like, yeah, I did that. Yeah. And I'm good at what I do. There are places where I'm bad. I'm not that good. There are places where I'm not always right, but what I'm doing, I know I'm doing it right. And I know that's the right thing to do. And so we live our lives to the extent possible in a more conscious way because the decisions we're making don't come necessarily from, if I don't say yes to everything, I'm going to be fired, but more like, is that the right thing to do?
Yeah. So what's coming up for me right now is really, really looking maybe at your values and what can you find in this situation that you could align with your values, right? Yeah. Maybe it's making the impact, or maybe it's, trying to develop compassion for your neighbor, or maybe it's some kind of creativity that you can bring to the table. But really even in a crappy situation, right? Really trying to step back, look at my values, and where can I begin to align, right? So it's less of this toxic resistance and more of this kind of open, creative energy, and knowing that you have a choice, right? You do have a choice to leave or to look or to get more education and make an exit plan, and you're never stuck, right? When you can begin to kind of frame it in that way, that feels a lot better, right? For the body, doesn't it?
Yes. And I feel again, like when you make these choices, as in, I cannot stay in this place any longer because I have integrity, and this is not, I'm not aligned with my values, with what I'm asked to do and how I'm asked to do. Of course, it's going to be hard to leave the place and it's going to be scary. But at the same time, think about the message that you're giving yourself. I'm honoring my values. I'm staying true to myself. Because at the end of the day, when we will be 90 or whatever, and you look back, you will have more pride. And you will feel proud of yourself that you made the right decision, because at that time it was the right thing for you, rather than making a decision where you stay in certain places because I don't have the choice. As you said, we have much more choice than we think. And one of them is accepting that it is what it is. And it's not the best, but I'm going to breathe through it and I'm going to make the most of it. And it could be some of my clients are in horribly boring jobs compared to their own potential. But you know what? What we do is we get them to go into further education. I have them find mentors or mentor other people. There is always one way for you to feel useful and impactful and powerful where you are, because we all are. And again, it doesn't matter whether you're a first year junior or you've been doing this for 20 years, or even sometimes I have clients who have been doing that for 30 years and their management want to get rid of them because they're too old, and they feel that as well. And this is where it's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It's not because somebody decided that there was a cutoff of relevance in life that you have to conform to that. F that.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Our relevance doesn't run out at, 55 or 60, right? We are relevant. And that's a really big topic for me. We are relevant until the day we are not breathing anymore, right? We have relevance the whole lifespan. Yeah. So I think that's actually really important to honor as well. Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else you would like to say or share? Anything I could have asked but didn't? Anything kind of on your heart or mind you want to add?
I would say, sometimes we hear a lot about follow your heart. Follow your heart is good, but it's not enough, because you're not only your heart. You're your brain, you're your mind. You are a sum of all of these parts. And maybe your body is also part of that decision making, but it's not always. So I would like for people, the same way that I do for myself, is when I feel a resistance, when I feel this kind of tension, is it because I'm afraid of something? So one of the things that I want to tell people is you are not what you are afraid of losing. So you're not your job, you're not your title, you're not your bank account. Sure, it's horrible to lose that because it puts you in a state of having to survive in a world that is not very kind. But at the same time, it's not you. It's only one part of you. And once we free ourselves, to the extent possible, it's difficult, but once we free ourselves from being afraid of losing something, and that's people pleasing and that's overachieving, it's all together. Once we free ourselves from that thought, and then we can breathe out. It's like, okay, I'm alive. I'm alive. I'm resourceful. And then you make a plan. Mm-hmm. So for me, that's really very important, is not to stay stuck in the idea that what would happen if I lose my job? If you do, let's make a plan right now. Have plan A, B, C, D. We can talk about financial, whatever. But don't act because you are afraid of losing something, that is a really not sovereign way of honoring who you are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. So my last question I ask people is that if you had one piece, like of all your experience and all the people that you've worked with, if you had one piece of sage advice to share with listeners to really help them begin to live intentionally, what would that be?
So I would say make a list of the things you are appreciative for. So it's not gratitude, because my brain would go, and so what? I worked for that, I earned it, and so what? So make a list of things that you appreciate. And sometimes it's very little things. And it could be a mental list. Sometimes you wake up in the morning, you don't want to go to the office. And sometimes like, oh, there's this new shower gel that I bought and smells like grapefruit. I'm looking forward to try it. So it's sometimes these little things that are going to shift your getting stuck into something a bit more joyful, a bit more fun. Life on Earth is not the easiest.
Yeah.
And at the same time, sometimes we take things for granted, including ourselves, including our health, including our bodies. And sometimes it's good to remind yourself, oh, I'm not that bad. At the end of the day, I did good.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I love that. To lighten up a little bit. I think we take it all so seriously, but to lighten up a little bit. And I love what you're talking about is really finding those little glimmers of joy, right, throughout the day. Maybe it's the smell of the coffee or the smell of the shampoo or the guy that you smile to on the corner, or right, just really trying to kind of see those glimmers of joy there, because they are there, right? They're there in every life, even the worst life, right? Not maybe the worst life, but even the deepest depression or the most challenging circumstances, those little glimmers, if you take a moment, they are there.
And they're for you. For you.
Yeah, and they can provide a little relief. Even in a moment, they can just like, that nervous system can like kind of soak that in a minute and then go on. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you so much. So where can people find you, connect with you, learn more about your services?
Yes. So you can find me on my website, MaydaPocCoaching.com, and on LinkedIn, Mayda Poc, and on Instagram, Mayda Poc.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. For listeners, I will put all those links in the show notes. And I do really have enjoyed our conversation. And I just want to thank you for your time today. It's been great.
And thank you for giving me the opportunity as well. That is a big gift. So thank you for that.
You are welcome. Take care.
Thanks so much for listening. I truly appreciate you and your time. I love to hear from listeners, so connect with me at katechampionauthor.com. Remember to grab your free hiking guide, and please take a quick moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the show. Thanks so much. Take care. Until next time. Hey, me again. Just a reminder, this podcast should not be considered professional advice. It's also not a substitute for mental, physical, or any other healthcare-related treatment. For any questions about your condition and or concerns, please contact a fully licensed healthcare professional. Thank you.